What is it? It's March 16th, 2016.
This is Idle Thumbs 254. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Breckon.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I was just going to say that I'm Steve Gaynor.
Oh, he's
But
Steve
I guess
Gaynor.
I'm not really a host anymore. I'm simply a guest.
You're an honorary... You're a what is it? A
Host emeritus.
Host emeritus.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Steve Gaynor.
That's me. We did a great job, as always.
Writer and designer of Gone Home.
Well.
And former co-host of this podcast.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm working on Tacoma. And I'm in San Francisco for GDC.
Nice.
2016. The 30th anniversary.
Man, that means that in several years, there's a few years from now, I will have gone to half of all the GDCs that have happened.
Wow.
And then you'll have gone to more than half of them, and that's when you should quit making games.
It'll still be a while, though. Because you started going in 2005?
No, 2003, I think.
Whoa, okay.
GDC started, yeah. So
this is the 30th, which means I've been to 12 of them. So, yeah.
You can do it, Chris.
You can do the math.
I believe in you. No.
If you can do that math, write into questions@idlethumbs.net. Tell Chris when he will have gone to half of all the GDCs.
Thanks. Develop a game to simulate this interesting challenge, and then enter it in the Idle Thumbs Wizard Jam whenever that happens again.
And then confer about it at the
At GDC.
developers conference.
On the Idle Forum.
At GDC 2022, which will be when Chris has gone to more than half of them. No, I don't actually. I didn't do the math. So what are we talking about here on this podcast?
Anyway, have you guys seen anything cool at GDC yet?
Saw that guy.
We should have all checked between us if we had anything interesting to talk about before we sat down to
I
record
liked
this
other
podcast.
talks, but mostly Jake's.
what did Jake talk about?
Oh my god.
I did not play Super
I thought you
Hypercube
said you didn't
yet,
listen
but
to
I
it.
wanted to.
Oh,
It's at the
man.
Day of the Devs thing.
Yeah.
I played it at a thing maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and it's fucking good. And I don't even like VR, but Super Hypercube is fucking good.
So that game is made by Kokoromi.
Mm-hmm.
So what is Kokoromi exactly then?
I think it just started off as just interactive artist collective in Canada, in whichever city Phil Fish was in. I thought.
Yeah.
And because I know Super Hypercube started as a game jam game that those guys made in
I didn't realize that.
Remember when there was that brief window where everyone got excited about putting the 2 LEDs on your glasses and having the Wii sensor bar do
the
head
head
tracking?
yeah.
Super Hypercube, I think, came out of a Wii sensor bar head tracking jam.
Oh,
Weird.
cool.
And then it got pitched around as that, and then got pitched around as a Kinect thing, and then finally turned into a VR thing. So it's been sort of floating in and out of those guys' lives for a decade now.
Wow.
The
And
lead
then-
developer on it is Heather Kelly, who has done a lot of academic stuff, but she's also done a lot of hardware-based game and interactive stuff. And then I think Phil is basically responsible for all the visuals,
Art design and stuff. Yeah.
So it looks very. You can totally see the super neon line.
It looks like the
Fez
trailer for Fez
psychedelia.
2.
Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah.
That game only exists so far. I mean, I'm aware that the game exists as more than this, but to my perception, empirically, that game only exists as GIFs on Twitter, and it's amazing. In that form, it's amazing. I assume the game is also.
I've played it.
it's
and
just
it's
the way that
actually
game looks in motion is so just all of the laser light aesthetic and everything is so crisp and clean and intentional looking.
And the actual acceleration and animation when those things impact, it's really
it's so
you
smart.
feel it. It's
It's
really good.
extremely
so
crunchy
cool.
and
Yeah. So it's the good VR game because it is that inside, and that's all that's inside of the VR headset, and I really like it for that.
Yep.
We're just
It's like you're inside what virtual reality is. It's supposed to be.
but it's also not afraid to just go, fuck it, your entire display is just filled up with a rainbow gradient for a little while or
Right.
whatever. But you can, I don't know, it's
like
good.
it's like it feels like a more kind of art directed version of what a Jeff Minter experience. You know what I mean? This sort of
it's
overwhelming audiovisual experience, but those games have by just sort of their identity is very chaotic and messy and weird and just colors everywhere, but this is so clean. And
I find Super Hypercube interesting because I feel like they're actually, God, this is going to sound shitty and meaningless, but I feel like Super Hypercube is one of the few VR games that we've seen that treats VR as a medium and as a canvas on which to
Not just
work
an extension
instead of just what if it's real life but you're inside of it. This is what does it actually mean to compose like deliberate compositions and shapes inside of this space, or to just sort of have things so close to your face that effectively VR is off for stylistic reasons at certain points, or the whole world becomes so homogenized or whatever.
Can one of you guys describe what this game is to play at all? Or
I did on a previous episode, but I can again. I mean, Super Hypercube. It's,
I could also do it if you don't want to do it again.
I love talking about Hypercube.
Okay,
you can interrupt me when I get it wrong or when you get too excited or mad.
Okay, it's a deal.
Super Hypercube is it's a falling block puzzle game in the spirit of a Tetris or something, but it's far more simple than that. Like Super Hypercube starts with
it's a lot more like Welltris.
It is a lot more like Welltris. More like Welltris.
What about Wettrix?
I don't think it's like that, Nick.
That's
No?
unrelated.
what are Welltris and Wettrix? I feel like Welltris I remember
Welltris is
in like
real.
the
Wettrix is something that Nick
recesses of
Breckon
my
said.
memory, but I can't.
No. Wettrix is real.
I know it's real, but you shouldn't have said
You
it.
say Wettrix?
Yeah. See? Classic
Is that like
Welltris and Wettrix.
Is that like a childhood game that you used to play?
It's an adult game, Chris.
It's an adult.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's for adults. It's M-rated.
virtual
it would be.
reality
No, I mean-
killer app Wettrix from Phil Fish.
Right. Anyway.
So in Super Hypercube, the
fish
first
is gonna get
thing
wet.
that happens, basically, a cube starts effectively in front of you or just behind you or something, and it floats away from you, and you're in VR.
Yeah.
You can rotate the cube on any axis using the analog or the analog stick,
thumbsticks,
the thumbsticks or the triggers to do so you can spin it all around itself. Off in the distance, there's a huge wall with a hole in it that is that is just a square.
Right.
And you can wait for the cube to go in there, or you can press the drop button like Tetris, and it just slams into it, at which point that wall comes flying towards you and does all sorts of insane neon effects. Then
then you like the feedback is really good because it like slams into it and like squeezes through it and then comes out the other side. It's very good.
Stuff like that is so good.
And then the game just like off from the left or right or any direction, another cube comes flying in and grafts itself to that cube. So now you have a 2x1 cube, and you're still just given a single square to put it into. So you
Right,
have to
you
then
have to
rotate
rotate
it.
everything around,
and then
yeah.
it goes boom, boom, and puts 2 more cubes on, and then you just have a completely insane shape. And it's basically...
Well, and then it starts adding
So then you're like having to find the right silhouette
yeah,
that
you-
matches.
yeah.
yeah.
It starts adding like tetronymos and
Right,
shit, like
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it just
S-shaped
it just
things
goes,
like weld
like,
onto
just a
the
ton
side.
of stuff. Just
and you
comes-
look at it and you're like, oh, if I rotated this once towards me on the horizontal and twice on the vertical, the outline of that would match the
weird
So,
shape.
so here's a question for you, having played it. Do you find that is actually how you play it, or do you play it like I'm just going to madly rotate 90 degrees at a time until I get to the thing I want and match the pattern?
It's the sort of game where you can get into the like puzzle game Zen state. I feel like where you sort of know your shape and you remember it.
Yep.
And the fact that it's in 3D does not entirely allow that, but it does let you sort of like you can glance around to the sides.
it's super valuable actually because like
Well,
okay,
it's almost
so
like because it's trolling you. Because at the beginning, the shape is just literally in front of you, so you can't see the hole without moving your head to look around
man,
the shape.
that's so good.
So you have to like
Yeah.
lean to the left to like have the
Yeah.
shape over on the right, and then rotate it, and then sort of like lean back and like go. Does the silhouette match? It's almost like you're like eyeing up. Like you are trying to line it up with your eyes to then make it line up again.
Yeah. And it does. I think it's somewhere in between where it's like you look at how it's currently oriented and you can see the shape, and I think you can definitely be like, you're looking around at what the shapes on the different side of the 3-dimensional thing are, and you're like, okay, I think I'm going to turn it left. No, wait, okay, one more time. Okay, and then if I turn it right, okay, now I got it. So you kind of like
you're sort of feeling towards something.
Well,
that you
and
can
I mean,
intuitively
sometimes
grasp
you can be like,
most of, but not all.
right.
of. Yeah,
Or sometimes if you're good or lucky, you're like, I think it's 2 to the left and 1 up, and you just got it. But
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, it's 1 more
Oh,
up.
and
Right.
also
Yeah.
it has bombs basically where if you get into if you're like I'm fucked and you're doing a crazy manic thing, you get it has a cooldown, but you can press a button and the whole game just goes and just suddenly slows down, and then you're in basically like bullet time. So you get extra time to manipulate the shape, but then the world gets a weird like black and white look. It like just changes the aesthetic, and then you can't do that again for a while.
Right.
And if you miss, it's not instant game over, but I think any of the pieces that don't fit just get ripped off of your shape, and you can only do that a few
So
times.
you basically lose a life, but then it makes the shape simpler. So it like knocks you down a difficulty level, but you can only do that a couple of times before it's just game over.
Yeah.
This game
It's
was
very
this
good.
game was announced this week for the PlayStation VR.
I think.
Well,
I
it's
think it
been
was
announced for
that it-
PlayStation VR, but it was
Oh, okay,
announced that it's
okay.
going to hit the launch. It's
okay.
going to be a
It's
launch game in
launch game
October.
for-
Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I'll have to get one of those things then. I wasn't counting on that.
Yeah,
Does it feel like it could be played with other VR solutions, or does it seem like does it?
Yeah,
It does, yeah. I
It
mean,
could definitely be an
anything that
Oculus game or
supports
whatever.
anything that supports head tracking feels like it could be. It could
I don't
work.
know enough about the fine differences between all of the ones.
I mean,
to
honestly,
know.
it's a game that you could devolve down to just be the mouse. Your mouse look equals your
Absolutely.
head, and then
Yeah.
keyboard rotates it. But it is like the fact that it is just an insane
Sure.
70s laser festival, and you are inside of it, and they deliberately built it so you have to like.
Crane your head.
It's
around
like
it,
you're
yeah.
almost like it's a VR game where you're almost tempted to like close one eye to deliberately flatten the perspective out
Yeah.
the way that you do when you're trying to
Right,
like
yeah.
align things with
Yeah.
your eye. It's a very strange sensation.
It feels like the kind of experience that I know this is not directly analogous to anything like in the movie Tron, but stuff like this that, as Jake, as you say, treats VR more as a medium than as just like a sort of incidental canvas for translating existing kinds of experiences. Although not that we don't have Tetris-like games, but
Yeah.
How they don't have Welltris-like games. I mean, please.
Or Wettrix.
Wetrix.
This feels like sort of trying to evoke more of the, probably not intentionally in these terms, but trying to get at more of the feeling that the people in the actual movie Tron got out of playing the games in Tron.
Right.
You know, it's like where you're in this like abstract virtual world, but there's a clear game system that you're engaging with that's like in front of your face, but it's not just like playing an arcade cabinet when they translated those games to
Right.
arcade cabinets that you can just play in the real world. Like this stuff like this feels closer to me to like achieving that sensation, because you're like, if you're just like in the world of cyber stuff, you know, like I don't know, I think that stuff
Which
is,
I mean, we are.
yeah, sure.
Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to make a game that experiments with like fully 3D surrounding weird compositions that just like you might as well make it fucking neon lasers
Yeah.
everywhere. Like if you're going to do it, just
Yeah.
make it be a world of lasers and rainbow gradients that explode.
Have you put any Super Hypercube images on your Recall blog, Steve?
I don't think so.
Some
I
of
think I
those
just
might-
haven't come across
some of those
them.
might
They
work.
would totally fit.
Yeah.
I mean, I like absolutely like Jake said. I think that I mean I'm not like I don't get excited about VR stuff very much, but the stuff that is cool is when it's like, okay, this is something that was built as like VR is.
Right.
This is what VR is about. This isn't about like, well, let's sit in a normal room. You know, it's like, no, this is like something that's unique to the medium, and I think it's just fun to be like, and let's make it look like the 80s conception of what we thought cyberspace was going to be like. Fuck it. Like, that's what people want, and it fits the weird
That's what some
abstract
people want
game where,
anyway.
well, I
It's
mean,
what we want.
it's not what, I mean, it's at least it's a thing that people can recognize as like, oh, that's that like thing that you would see in movies,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
actually the thing, and,
Yeah,
and
I
it
was-
really supports
I was-
the abstract nature of the game, I think.
I was very glad that Sony actually like and Kokoromi made it a launch game. Like I want Super Hypercube to just be the PlayStation VR pack-in game. Like what I wish is that Sony would just
yeah.
buy
Yeah, like the Wii
that.
Sports sort
That could
of
be the
like,
Tetris.
this is-
It could be
this
the
is
Tetris to
yeah.
Game Boy or the Wii Sports. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like your mom might think it's weird for a second, but the moment that she actually puts the headset on, it would be like, oh, I understand how to play this because it.
I don't think mom likes this game.
Oh,
No, I was gonna say I
We
don't
talk-
know.
I
if
think-
Mom
I think
does.
mom likes
Okay,
Wii Sports, and I do not think she likes Super Hypercube.
maybe not our mom, but there are moms now that are younger than us.
Nick's
Steve.
Maybe
mom.
Nick's mom.
Yeah.
Maybe Nick's mom.
See, I don't know if mom.
Okay.
The
As
I
in
just
my
mean,
mom.
I think it. I still. I mean, regardless of like the shorthand we're using, I do think Super Hypercube is much more aggressive about making you feel like, oh, this is like intimidating. I'm not gonna do that, because it is like fast paced, and when you do fail, it's like and you get owned. Like, I think it's a very cool game.
What's it like,
And
Steve?
You get owned.
it's
not
like
for moms.
and you get owned. It is
Not for moms. Is that what you said a second ago?
Yeah, that would be like the warning label.
It's. I would just say like.
And the commercial for
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
the
95,
kid would
like,
like
1995,
the all in the commercial for that. What would happen when it like would the out of the headset, all of the like lasers and electricity would come and like fry the kid's brain
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
he's playing
You
it,
would-
and then
yeah.
they would like out of his teeth, it would like all of the weird shockwaves would erupt as he's like twitching
Right.
on the
and then
floor.
his teeth would just chatter and say, "Not for moms."
No way. It would
They would
cut to
jump out his
like
head.
black and white footage of like a scientist,
Well,
or like
yeah,
a
yeah,
researcher.
exactly,
It's not for moms. let's
And then his teeth would jump out of his head and then eat the kid, and then also say not
It's
for
a
moms.
super hypercube.
It's in
Yeah.
the game, apparently.
Only on Virtual Boy.
It
All I mean
is
I
aggressive
think
and
it's,
weird,
it's
but
more intimidating.
but I think
it's
that-
not as inviting as like Wii Sports. I think.
I think a comparison to Tetris is actually reasonably fair, given the era that Tetris came out in this.
I think
But
I think Tetris is a lot closer. Right?
a thing that I think I might have talked about the last
Or
time I
Welltris.
talked about Super Hypercube is it's the smallest detail that I missed something, whatever, that I love is it uses a DualShock controller, and the DualShock has that light bar on the back, which
Yeah.
means that the Sony iToy camera can track its position. So when you look down in Super Hypercube, you
Do they
see.
still call that the Sony iToy camera?
I don't know. I imagine
On
it is.
PlayStation 4?
All I call it is it's an iToy. Let's fucking
I'm
call it
pretty
an
sure
iToy.
they call it just a PS4 camera.
Fuck that! It's iToy.
It is an
Always
iToy.
iToy forever. Anyway, when you look
2016 year of the iToy.
when you look down in Super Hypercube, the same way that you see like the like Rift or the Vive controllers or whatever, they made a totally neon glowy DualShock that
Oh,
tracks
good.
to your hand.
Like a wireframe one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's only like the important parts. It looks like if
Okay.
someone literally, like if an artist made a 3D DualShock out of actual neon tubing.
Right.
And you can rotate it around in your hand and stuff. And it's flashy as fuck, but also it just lets you see where the stupid face buttons on the controller are. Because you look down because it says press X to stop time. And you're like, oh, it's a PlayStation. I
Which
can never
console
remember
am I
which one
on?
that is.
Yeah.
And then just looking down and seeing that is so good.
Yeah.
Like it also grounds you in the space in a really nice way. Like
It's highly good.
I don't think that other games that have a DualShock on PlayStation VR are going to do that, but it seems like they should because
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
cool.
it was really good. Good VR UI.
Well, that's super
Good
Hypercube.
Vrui. Good Vrui, as they call it.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you guys have been enjoying on the GDC show floor?
Not the show floor, but I went to a talk about Darkest Dungeon
Oh yeah.
today. That
Oh, I
was,
tucked into that for a second.
Oh yeah, it was really good. I mean, that game was great. Did you guys play that game?
A little
I
bit,
played
yeah.
it some.
Yeah,
just
it
a
was.
little bit.
I thought it was like a really good game.
It owned the shit out of me, and I alt F4'd.
Well, that's because you're Steve.
Well, I don't know. I just like got very owned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the talk was about making a game that is supposed to own you.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I know you.
Why can't the game just leave me alone?
I know, Steve. I've heard you like
Doesn't
make
have to
this
own me
complaint
so
about games
much.
before. I know. It's just some people like games that own them
Yeah, that's true.
more than you do, and I'm one of them often. But this Darkest Dungeon is like a side-scrolling party-based RPG with a really cool sort of very like light and shadow woodcut art style that's really really unique in video games, I think. And
It
does
looks very much like Mike Mignola's like Hellboy.
That's a
artwork.
good touchdown. Yeah, gets away with a lot of sort of like relatively low fidelity animation, but because the style is so like, bold and elemental, it works really well and feels really cohesive. And it's just a really punishing game where you have a party of 4 adventurers like going through these catacombs and like going insane and suffering terrible status effects and getting sick, and just it's brutal and very sort of random number generator like dominated, but also there's a lot of strategy and tactics. It's a turn-based strategy tactics kind of game at its heart. Anyway, so the I guess lead designer of the game did a talk about it, and one of the thing that
Who will be on designer notes coming up.
oh cool.
Speaking, yeah.
Okay,
So
well,
that's why
Johnson's
Soren.
Oh,
couldn't
that's why-
guest
That's
this
why
week.
he's not
All
here
right,
right
Soren
now,
Johnson
because he's
is
going to
the-
record
yeah.
a podcast with that guy. So watch
Okay,
out
cool.
for that.
Well, that's awesome. Well, then you'll hear some of the stuff I'm going to
Yeah.
relate. But yeah, I'll
In
definitely listen to
months'
that episode.
time.
Yeah. I just recorded with Soren last night, and he was like, "This will probably come out in about a year." I was like, "Okay."
Really? Really?
Yeah.
Wow, man, that's crazy that he has so many of those lined up.
Maybe you should put him out like twice a month.
I know. I think he should also.
Write to Soren Johnson on Twitter and tell him.
He was talking about what went right and wrong in the development of the game, and a lot of it was sort of stuff that like typical postmortem kind of stuff, and it was interesting. The thing that was crazy that I didn't know about because I didn't play the game that much in early access, or if I did, I didn't play it at the time that this thing was erupting. they had a mechanic that they launched in early access as part of a content update, like their first big actual content update, that added corpses to the game in a way such that, like, the combat in the game is 2D. So it's your party, all four of the members lined up, versus the opposing party lined up, and they're all side to side. So, like, the members of your party closest to one another are like the melee attacks, and then the ranks behind them can do ranged attacks.
Can do various range, yeah.
And so there was this dominant strategy that he was explaining that in the community that was just players would always focus fire entirely on the first enemy, because then you'd knock out like their melee character, and then it would put a ranged character into the melee position, and they're going to be less effective. And it was just this completely dominant strategy that kind of made the game a lot less unpredictable, which was, the game is supposed to be unpredictable and sort of weird and punishing. And so they added a mechanic that when you kill an enemy, instead of just instantly disappearing and then moving the other enemies up in ranks, it would replace the enemy with just a corpse, and the corpse would just hang around for a while. So you can wait for the corpse to disappear after several turns, or you can dedicate some like attacks to getting rid of it. Anyway, so they launched this thing, and basically their entire community revolted in just like a totally insane and like utterly dominating and overpowering way about this corpse thing that people just absolutely despised, or enough people despised to like represent essentially like what seemed like an army of people. Were you aware of this?
I was there for that like 10 minutes of the talk. Yeah. And it seemed like the thing that he was trying to describe was, it's not so much that the entire community came to that conclusion on their own, but that a vocal minority came to that conclusion, and then that just became the narrative, because people would say, like, I heard this game isn't just good anymore.
Ruined. I heard they just
Where'd you hear
ruined
that?
the game.
I don't know. I just heard it. That's the way I feel about this game now.
He had a link. He had a quote from a website that he didn't name, I don't think, but in like July of, I guess must have been last year, they posted something that was like, it was like one of their top 50 games of something or other, and the Darkest Dungeon was on it, and it was the only early access game on it. And in the blurb was like, it's telling that this is the only early access game on this list, like incredibly promising, incredibly accomplished game, like already setting a high bar or whatever. And then he had a blurb from them from the next month, like August, and it was like, sad to see the fate of the sad fate of this game ruined, like once so promising, now like this is how it ends. And he's like, oh my god, we're still in early access, like what? Like holy shit. It was crushing, like watching him just like link all of these paragraphs and these forum posts and just reactions, and then the sort of like secondhand reactions of like, oh yeah, that's that game that I just apparently got totally ruined. Like, oh, that sucks. It was insane.
Well, his conclusion wasn't that you shouldn't put your game on early access, but it was that you shouldn't like materially fuck with your game design at the point after which you put it on early access.
His argument was, I have mixed feelings about his conclusion.
I felt the same way. I felt because, well, I mean, he was just saying like, I thought that's what this was for. You experiment with the game design while it's still in early access, and it's basically a beta test. But his conclusion was, don't do that because people will destroy you. But
the most interesting observation he made about that,
you might get owned yourself.
Fun.
Yeah. So I'm very ambivalent about it, because on the one hand, it seems like that's the point of early access. He also made the point that was really good, though, that was made very concisely, which was, despite the fact that it's an early access, people paid money for the game, and then you can change it into something that is not the game that they paid for anymore. And that was a really powerful sentence. Like, I had never heard it framed exactly that way. But he also, you get the sense that there was kind of like a Stockholm syndrome thing going on, where his conclusion, like part of his conclusion was like, and you have to acquiesce to like the thing that won't make your life a hell.
So did he end up taking corpses back out?
They ultimately shipped with it.
I just played it like for the first time maybe a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago, and they were totally in. Yeah,
there were other features he mentioned that they like made optional because of feedback, which also like is kind of a bummer. If they're, like you'd think you'd want to design the game such that it should be at its best with the thing there or not there. But like, but yeah, they eventually, like, it sounds like it all sort of got. He was actually quite shocked. He asked the crowd, you know, presumably many of whom in the crowd have played the game. He's like, so how many of you know about like the corpse controversy? And only a few people raised their hand, and he was like totally surprised.
Did he ask how many played the game?
I hadn't heard of it either.
I'm not hardcore.
Well, he asked how many people played the game and then would never play it again.
No, I mean, so
which was
the question that he should have asked, like, is how many of you have played Darkest Dungeon?
Yeah.
How many of you knew about this corpse thing or care about it as a person who played it? And it would have been
he should have asked all those questions. You're right. I imagine a decent number of people in the room had played the game because they chose to go to a postmortem about it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, I don't know. That's why I went to it, because I thought it was a really good game that was really well scoped and really smart. And the postmortem totally confirmed like my suspicions about their attitude in developing it. Like a lot of it was about just being really ruthless about what to actually dedicate design resources to and what not to, and like that, you know, it really, I think, just made it clear that game was totally intentionally the way it was, and the things that were good about it were really like achieved well.
Cool,
you know. But anyway, like that.
Well, as a paying GDC customer, I really wish that he would have done the survey the way that I liked. that I said.
Yeah, it was that was a harrowing.
Yeah, that's
section
that's
of that
rough.
talk. It was really hard. I was also sitting there. I was watching it with Chris Hecker, who's making Spy Party, and he was basically like having a heart attack during that section, because he's making a multiplayer game that is not yet on Steam Early Access. It's on his own like personal.
It's just sold through the Spy Party store, basically, right?
Yeah. So you know.
It's got to be really hard to make a game that. I mean, he was talking about like the way that they approach balance, which is that they didn't really try to balance the game.
Yeah, which I thought was great.
Which is a great deliberate choice to make. But then the flip side of that is that when you have feedback coming back to you, how do you like weight what one person is saying about like the way that they feel about the game, right? Like that's such a that's like I mean, I understand like how you can kind of approach that, but it's still like a nightmare thinking about the process of having to like deal with somebody saying like this game is horrible, I hate it, but then also that's kind of your intention is to make some people hate it. So then
because I mean, like one of the big things he said was like we knew we were making a game that wasn't going to appeal to everyone, and so like how do you differentiate between this is just not who the game is for and this is actually maybe who the game is for and it's just not working on them.
It is really tough to look at like when that corpse thing gets added and the community that you currently have, a subset of it gets really upset, then you have to decide, okay, am I making Darkest Dungeon just for these people?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that who it's for now? Am I going to just optimize the game towards those people who complained? Or am I on early access and planning to release because I think there are a bunch of people later who are not going to give a shit and I'm going to have to make these people mad and keep going?
Well, and so another thing
or has the communication just fucked me forever?
Yeah. Right. Another point he made, which I think is really important and valuable, is that when they first put the corpse thing in, it was like probably not minimum viable, but probably not far past minimum viable. So like there was only one corpse. There weren't different corpses for all the different enemy types and stuff. And so it, to some extent, it probably felt like a cheaper version of what it was intended to be, but it was like early access. So, you know, you try things, but like, nope. If your game like presents as like a complete game that people already know how it's supposed to feel or how they think it's supposed to feel, then they're going to probably be less charitable to something that doesn't seem like it's up to that standard.
It seems like a lot of early access games that have an audience deliberately like go out of their way very far to post a roadmap so that people aren't blindsided by like, so that you don't just go, oh, I had a crazy idea and I changed the game, as opposed to like listing a thing, you know, like 3 page heights down a list of intended features so that your community kind of hopes for it. That said, obviously you can't think of everything.
Well, also that assumes that you're not, so that sort of like precludes one of the at least theoretical purposes of early access is to find out what the things are that you didn't think of already.
Well, maybe this should be like, you know how when you apply for a job at a large professional company, they make you disclaim any prior inventions that you've made, and there's a certain type of person who will just write down 4 things that just sound like vague descriptions of something so that they can make them later and not get sued by their employer. Maybe you just need to be like, character resuscitation feature.
Right.
And then, like, you don't know what that is, what that could ever mean, but your community's like, I wonder when that's going to come up. Or just, like, invent sort of just weird feature equivalent of just arbitrary widget names.
Mutators.
Part of me thinks you're just creating even more headaches for yourself, because you're then going to have the group of
when's that going to show up?
You're then going to have the people who never read anything in the first place, because most people just, like, don't read stuff.
Nobody's going to read
and then
that.
they're going to be blindsided. Then you have the other people who do read everything and spend 6 months imagining what their perfect version of that feature is, and then somehow just, like, working it into their working model of, like, what it's going to be for real.
Oh, but then there's one guy who just goes, well, I don't know what any of you are talking about. This was in the documentation for months.
That's true.
You get that guy, and then he's the best, even though he's also wrong, and you feel bad.
Yeah.
He's a good guy, though.
Yeah, he's
a good guy type.
He means to have around.
Yeah. Early access featureless defender. Yep. That's also one of the ones you list. Right.
Featureless defender?
Yeah, he shows up.
I guess it is actually that. That is what a corpse is in this game. It's a featureless defender.
Yes.
It just sits there taking hits, doing nothing.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Ruining the game.
I think we should take a break.
Oh,
yeah.
What? Yeah. Steve?
It's a shame that game got ruined, though.
Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by MIT Press. MIT Press has a whole line of books about video games, sort of video game design, critical thinking about video game, called Playful Thinking. There are books by a number of authors, including Catherine Isbister, Miguel Seekert, Greg Kostikian, longtime video game designer, and Jesper Juhl, or Jesper Juhl. I feel like I've known that guy's name for a long time, and I don't know which way it's pronounced.
It's actually Jesper Juhl.
Oh, is it Jesper Juhl? It's not Jesper Juhl?
No, it's Jasper Juhl.
It's none of these things.
It's none of these things. Anyway, Jesper Juhl, perhaps, wrote a book called The Art of Failure, an essay on the pain of playing video games. And it is basically it's essentially an extended essay about how video games force players to continually confront their own failure, and why that is compelling, and why that's something that people are drawn to, even though very frequently when you watch people play video games, they
don't
have
like to get
frustration,
owned.
And yes, exactly, don't like to get owned in Steve's case. Why people who aren't Steve enjoy that. If you go to mitpress.com/idlethumbs, you will find a whole rundown of all of these books. There are about half a dozen of them so far. It's an ongoing series. And they're about all different aspects of game design and aesthetics and sort of emotion and all kinds of other things that go into video games.
Yeah, what are some of the other titles that were on there?
Other titles include How Games Move Us, Emotion by Design by Catherine Isbister, Uncertainty in Games by Greg Kostikian.
Yeah, that one seems like it would be an interesting topic to dig
I think so
into.
too. It's about how uncertainty in games, from Super Mario Brothers to Rock, Paper, Scissors, engages players and shapes play experiences. All of these things seem relevant to the last discussion we had, actually. So yeah, if you go to mitpress.com/idlethumbs, you can read more about those books and all the other ones.
This is really worth going to just for the thrill of typing mitpress.com/idlethumbs into your web browser.
Yep. Video game.
Other people that wrote things.
Yes, for you. Yes, for you.
Jesper Juhl and his brother, Jesper Juhl. I don't know, I mean...
Jesper Juhl, game researcher.
Nice. Is that a person or was that a computer?
Couldn't tell you.
Because if that's a computer,
That was
I
a
don't
computer.
trust it.
That was
I
a
don't
computer.
trust it then.
That absolutely was.
Well,
Understandably.
I don't believe that it's true. Thanks, MIT Press. mitpress.com/idlethumbs.
Jesper Juhl.
Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is also brought to you by Harry's. Harry's sends razors and shaving equipment to your door, at whether it's a door of an office or a house.
Well, they sent it to a P.O. box?
A lot of P.O. boxes, actually, the post office will accept deliveries now, and you can request a mailing address that formats like a street address for your P.O. box.
Oh, that's cool.
So
We'll
take
try that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Harry's will send high-quality shaving equipment to probably most addresses. And, Steve.
We care about this.
Yep. They have a new blade handle design that I just got today that is like a rubber grip.
Ooh,
Keeping-
it's like on blade?
It's very on Blade. Oh, yeah. Yes. Harry's stuff is really cool. I've been using it for a while now. They have two different they have a shave cream and a shave gel depending on which one you like. They have the little aftershave thing. They've got the blades. They've got the razor. It all can just come in a recurring order you can set up. You can either order stuff just case by case or as a recurring thing, and it just shows up to your house. It is really cool. Removes hair from a face. So
it's all true, Chris.
I mean, probably other places too, but I've mainly used it on a face. I've exclusively used it on a face.
I would like to amend my statement.
If you go to harrys.com and use the promo code THUMBS, you will get $5 off your first order, which means you can get their whole starter kit that comes with the razor, that comes with the blades, and the cream or gel for only $10, which is pretty tough to beat. So, yeah. harrys.com and the promo code THUMBS.
Video games.
I just remember the dream that I had about Idle Thumbs.
Oh man,
yeah.
This is not an extensive memory though. I fucked up.
Did you write it down?
I didn't write enough.
Oh,
but I just the short form is that we did an Idle Thumbs episode. I'm pretty sure the dream was an entire episode's worth of content. I'm having really long, just 60-minute detailed dreams lately.
Fractal dreams.
So I think we basically had an entire episode, but essentially at some point in the middle of the episode, I fucked up. I just did something stupid, and Jake got really mad at me. Really mad. And he just walked over. You were there, where you normally sit, and I was sitting here.
Uh-huh.
And then you... and then you just got straight up, just walked right up and got in my face. And I was like, what? It's just a podcast. And you just took your hands. And in the Terminator or any of those 80s movies where somebody will just thrust they'll just grab a claw. They'll turn their hand into a claw and just dig it into your chest. And you can see the skin just start to pull off of the chest, and there's the endoskeleton underneath.
Right.
But then the skin's just tearing. You did that to me and then just lifted me up in the air.
Oh my God.
And then that was the end of the dream. I woke up and just was like, oh, I'm sorry, Jake.
Man.
I'm sorry.
That was right before I was going to say an amazing one-liner.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You fucked it up.
No, deprived Jake of that.
I know. Well,
that's the whole point of doing all that stuff in the 80s movies, so you can follow it up.
Yeah.
I
know. You probably said it. I just forgot.
With you should have had a cutting barb or something in the in the podcast, but oh well.
You need a lift.
That's it.
That's all.
I don't know.
You do live.
Yeah, there's got to be something. No one's coming up with it right now, though, so it's okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
We'll be deluged with more clever things than we could think of.
What should I have said to Nick Breckon when picking him up by his skin?
Get a grip.
I kind of just said...
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
is that good?
I think if Nick had incredulously said "get a grip" to me because I was behaving irrationally when I walked over to him, and then I picked him up and said "you get a grip,"
right,
and then threw him through both walls,
right. That's the Simpsons scene. What you just described. It's get a grip. I got it.
I got it.
Yeah.
You are gripped.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You are the one who is gripped. And then you just go through the corner of the office.
Yep. Yeah, played some more NBA.
Oh, really?
I don't know why.
What part? I mean, I guess you just played normal games.
I was just my guy that looks like me. The only thing I learned is that I hate myself.
We already learned that in Stardew Valley last week.
Well, that's true, but specifically, my guy is now good enough that because he looks like me and because they're attaching I score now 60 points in a game, which is I'm just setting records. I'm the greatest basketball player that's ever existed. And then after my guy will score a point, he'll do stupid dances and just go hey, sure, I told you. And just have he has all these just stupid one-liners just
Did you
not even
yourself?
80s
Did you have to record them yourself with a microphone?
No, they're just subbed in, and they're just terrible. They just make my guy look like a real douche, and it made me realize that I hate my guy. I hate this person, and I hate the fact. And it actually made me think it would be really interesting if more games had character creation that was close, that could get you close enough to looking like yourself. and then the way that would like make people feel about the things that their characters are doing. Because it actually, like, for a second, I realized, like, God, if I actually was a guy who played basketball and behaved like this, I would be like a terrible, like, this is awful. Like, and if it was just like a basketball player that was just given to me, like auto generated, I would have just completely bought it and just been like, oh yeah, whatever. I wouldn't have thought about it twice. But like, if you're like playing GTA and your guy looks exactly like you, and then you shoot a person, I think that would just like blow your mind. Like, I think you would feel like really
don't people
shitty
do
in a way
that in video? Aren't there games?
Kind of, but like not. This
if you're
is
set up right, yes. Some people would be like, yeah.
Well, yeah,
like the bad side of it.
Right? Yeah, there is that side to it. But like this thing is like so uncanny valley, like really, like it's getting really close.
Yeah,
that it made me realize, like, oh man, the second this actually is like, if this was every game, you would. You're like,
oh, it was fine when Mario did it, but now that it's me,
yeah. Anyway. So that's the last thing I did.
I wonder if Nick Breckon will ever find a game that doesn't, that the takeaway isn't that it reminds him how much he hates himself.
Yeah. But then, then I just I go back again and I love myself, right? I have to accept what I am.
Sure.
There's a whole cycle that goes on, and then I lean into it.
Sounds healthy.
It's fine.
Good.
Yeah, there's probably some like Greek word that describes this cycle that you find yourself in constantly.
Stupid. Anyway, got some reader mail, Chris? I think we're out of content.
Yeah, so Mike Cohen writes, considering how much you love Mr. DNA, his return is imminent. Hallowed be thy clippy-like DNA strand. And then he links an article that suggests that a recently unearthed T-Rex skeleton may include Dino DNA.
Sick. What does that have to do with Mr. DNA? I mean, aside from the word Dino DNA.
Yeah, I don't know what it has to do with Mr. DNA specifically, but it's definitely like this combined with...
I thought it was impossible. I thought they determined that the half-life of DNA means that it's like 10,000 years, so at that point, the curve just means there's no way that we can recover.
Well, it's
DNA.
full of holes.
Oh, and you fill them.
You complete the code.
Get stuck in the sap.
I guess that person's
says,
right. They're right all along.
Yeah, they were.
They knew what it was.
This T-Rex, which was found in Montana and dates to 68 million years ago, retained medullary bone that reveals the individual is pregnant. Medullary bone, I don't know how to pronounce that, is only present in female living dinosaurs, i.e. birds, just before and during egg laying. It's this type of bone that could retain preserved DNA.
Interesting.
It says this is a very unlikely find, but they think it may be the case.
Wow.
But is it like a cool dinosaur, or is it just like a shitty one? Like, is it, like
T-Rex? What do you mean?
Oh, it's a T-Rex? Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that part.
They have a T-Rex.
Good. All right. Oh, we have a T-Rex.
Yeah.
So you have a T-Rex? Mm-hmm. A T-Rex?
Also, this article taught me that crocodiles are the closest living relatives of dinosaurs. I didn't know that.
That's like the most boring reveal of all time. Oh, that big scaly tooth monster is a dinosaur.
Well, just like, because ever since Jurassic Park, I feel like birds have just like taken over the public imagination of dinosaurs for good reason, right? But like, I just never did.
Nope.
Dinosaurs are the
crocodiles.
They're the missing link between a bird and a crocodile, a dinosaur.
Yep.
If you did like a morph,
if you did the little silhouettes of the evolution of man, go from a bird
to a crocodile, bird to a dinosaur,
baby dinosaur.
It's actually the other way around. The dinosaurs did lead to birds. It says, this article points out that birds inherited egg laying from dinosaurs, which must have inherited egg laying from whatever preceded them.
Oh, crocodiles.
That was when a crocodile got stuck in the sand.
croco DNA.
Nicholas Meal writes, Nick's description of his Stardew Valley experience sounds like he was role-playing a textbook case of severe clinical depression. End of email.
Listen to that genuine laughter. Yeah, it's like he means it.
It's like the Mozart laughter from Amadeus.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah.
Evan writes, hey Thumbs, last week you were talking about how you can't embed MIDI files in web pages anymore. I struggled with the same problem and found a workaround.
Good email, yes!
You can embed a YouTube video on loop and set it to autoplay, as seen on my website, www.skeleton.zone. Sadly, iOS does not allow autoplay, but it works well for desktop browsers. Thanks and keep up the great work, Evan.
100% approved.
That's just the beginning of an infomercial.
I wonder what music plays on
the same problem.
skeleton.zone.
I don't know. You're not going to find out on that phone, though. I guess you could play the video.
We'll just see.
Yeah. It makes sense that it only works on desktops. If you're going to have that old shitty 90s web
I bet an Android phone.
You want a big monitor to be.
An Android phone's going to play the shit out of that YouTube video because maybe it's got some monetizable content.
That's probably true. I guess Steve could maybe find that out right now.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Oh my god.
There you go.
Wow. All right.
Enter the skeleton zone.
I live inside it every day. That didn't sound like a MIDI to me.
No.
You'd have to render the MIDI and then put it on a YouTube video.
Yeah, it would just be a YouTube of a MIDI.
Let's see. So John Lakey writes, "Howdy thumbs, love the podcast. I'm writing about a topic I don't hear you or anyone else address. I'm a programmer, and sometimes when I reach a certain level of frustration in a video game, instead of going online to look up an answer or find a cheat, I'll open the game up, find where the code is easiest to break, and fiddle with it until I've beaten the game or done something cool or hilarious or impossible or become bored. This can be anything from decoding and rewriting old-school save files to overwriting the game's code to accomplish almost anything. I keep it to single-player games. It's just my own joy in tinkering. More recently, I decided to play Super Hexagon and wasn't very good at it. However, I figured writing a bot to play the game would be fun, and so I did, and it was. On not cheating mode, it can go about 90 seconds. With cheating, it can go much, much longer. Have you ever tinkered with games like this? Thanks, John from Maryland. P.S. The text in the video is not purely decorative. They're debug prints showing the path the cursor has chosen to take. P.P.S. Shout out to github.com/darkman, who created the foundations of the bot." That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've never done that because I don't have that skill set.
Yep.
I mean, I guess I could modify config files and save files if they're in a text format.
Yeah. I've edited some variables in Civ 2 or something.
Sure. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that does seem cool. Just see basically using a tool assisted method of seeing how far you could go or something could go with Super Hexagon.
So here I'm just watching a computer play Super Hexagon right now, and it's not that crazy yet because it's still in the part of the game that I as a human can play. Yeah. But I assume that much like the Go winning robot, it will just destroy us all eventually, physically in the world.
Its Super Hexagon skills will evolve.
Yeah. The thing that the reader described reminds me of do you guys remember the era of trainers?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Diablo and games like
trainer.
that? Yeah.
You would download a DOS executable. Ugh. Good.
Yeah, and then you'd make your guy super powerful.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's as much of a thing anymore.
Wait, it called itself a trainer,
really?
But it was actually just a stat modifier?
Oh man, did you not know trainers?
Wow. I didn't play Diablo.
I guess you didn't play the kinds of games that trainers would have. I know, but those probably just weren't Jake's deal, I would guess.
I think that I would have assumed that trainers would have been one of Jake's more favorite things from the 80s.
I think if he was aware of them, they would be. Yeah. They were
Did they look cool? I don't.
No, it was basically in the DOS era, and it would be like when you.
I didn't really like cheating in any way in video games. I liked modifying games to make them weird, but I just the idea of. I would maybe the way that you could make a game weird with a game genie. I'd be interested in a trainer.
That's pretty much. I mean,
their intent was probably just to immediately make your dude ripped, to just give you all the stuff,
master level. But there were some games. I don't know. I think that there were some games where they were just really fucking hard, and I couldn't get farther in them. And it'd be download the trainer. Now you have 1,000,000 health. Okay.
Yeah. I think I only ever did that in games like SimCity. I would just type in the cheat, right?
Shift Fund, yeah.
I don't think I was aware of and had downloaded a Diablo trainer, but I just remember feeling this just makes the game pointless, and so I just didn't really
especially in a game like Diablo.
The only game that I had the code to was QBasic Gorillas, and I definitely fucked up that game.
Oh man.
But that's everyone should fuck up QBasic Gorillas once in their life.
The first game I ever played.
Yeah, then you can make the banana explode huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was from that reader mail. I was just surprised. I feel like so many games are so locked down that it would at least take a lot of jumping through hoops to get to a point where you could even modify code or have the save game display in a readable format or whatever. But I mean, I guess if you're a skilled programmer, you could write stuff to decode that kind of stuff. But no, I think we are all
people
scrubs
have
and
decompilers and stuff.
Yeah.
A really crazy thing that happened after development on Space-Based DF9 at Double Fine stopped was that, I don't know if this is like how much has been done on this recently, but like, I forget if we talked about this on the podcast.
We did a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like a subsection of the community just continued developing that game, which was a totally like crazy thing. That was really cool.
But you also, when development ended, they released source code for it, right? Mm-hmm. Or they made it open source?
Some of it. Okay. Just the Lewis scripting, not the
engine code.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, right.
Yeah, there was some of the engine was open source, and then some of it was not. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that stuff was cool. I guess we don't have a lot to say about that because none of us are that kind of programmer.
I remember when people would do that kind of shit in online games in the 90s. I have a specific memory of playing Interstate 76 over 56K dial-up, and you would play, and you'd be like, oh, I've like got my car, I'm going to do some deathmatch car battles, and then there would just be somebody that had just used a hex editor to like attach a giant tank body to their car and like 20 turrets that fired missiles simultaneously, and you would just drive around and delete everyone, and you're like, cool, great. Video games sure are fun. But the version of that I did and enjoyed is in
Grand Theft Auto 5 one time, I found this guy. I knew you were going to say that. I was dressed as a clone of him with pink hair and started blowing him up and stealing all his money.
I just climbed on his back and started stroking his neck, just stroking it over and over again. In Interstate 76, all of the like anything that was not like a missile or the terrain was a vehicle. So there were armadillos that were just like going through the desert, but technically they were AI vehicles, and so if you used like whatever hack for the game, you could go online and choose your car as the armadillo, and then you could just be driving it around. But the hack that I used made it have like super high armor and drive super fast, so you're just a tiny little armadillo and you just go and just like T-bone a car and it would just explode. So I guess sometimes it is fun to cheat online.
Yeah. Well, fair enough.
Only if you're a super fast armadillo.
Superfast Armadillo is a very promising new indie studio that's up in Toronto, I think.
Yeah, they're like a turbine spin-off. I don't know. That's just a company that seems like something called Superfast Armadillo would come out of.
Yeah, probably, although they're in Massachusetts.
I know, but
or somewhere.
They are in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Eli Kaplow writes, your talk about crossword plagiarism interested me since my father is a professional crossword puzzle maker.
Holy shit.
It makes sense that the New York Times almost never gets plagiarized since they pay a lot more than other publishers and nobody wants to be blackballed by them. My dad would send to them first, and only if it was rejected would he send to the LA Times. This would continue down the line until he got to a smaller publisher like Simon & Schuster, where it would go into a big puzzle book. The talk about bridge reminded me of a great card game called Tichu. It's similar in that you can't talk to your partner about what's in your hand, but it gives you a few tools to tell them that you have a good hand or even an awesome hand. In the game, you can call Tichu, where you bet 100 points that you'll go out first. There's also a Grand Tichu, where you bet 200 points before you can even see all your cards. Thanks for having a great podcast, Eli. P.S. My dad sent puzzles to Tim Parker in the past, but he almost never answered emails and rejected all of his submissions. That's the guy who's been called out for all the plagiarism.
You didn't need him.
That guy should.
We've got plenty of crosswords.
Yeah, that guy's dad should search the database of crossword puzzles from that guy and see if they were rejected after all.
Oh man.
God, you're right.
Oh, he totally should.
That's actually extremely true.
I don't need these. I have
Soft
photocopied
rejection.
them. Yeah.
Yep.
I have 60 people sending me puzzles every week.
Ooh.
Oh, gross. Well.
Now that we've uncovered yet another avenue of this crossword scandal.
Mm-hmm. Now that we followed the money one step further.
Just is the same guy.
It's fine.
I don't
What's
know
up, Nick? Thinking about stuff over there?
You all right? You feeling pretty good? Yeah. Got any?
What's on your mind, Nick?
I got nothing.
Huh.
Okay. Sorry, I have another email.
Fantastic. Yeah, we should probably wait longer for you to start reading it. I agree with that.
Oh, God.
Sorry. Nathan Ratcliffe writes, "Hey Thumbs, been listening since version 1.0, never got in touch beyond the occasional tweet, but maybe you can satisfy my curiosity on something." I can't remember if I've read this email before, so if I have, just
well, if he
me.
says what is game, yes, you've read this before.
I've heard that developers learn about what went right and wrong with their games and implement these lessons in future titles. How do they collect this feedback? Is it anecdotal or data-driven? I imagine a combination of both and collected via monitoring people's opinions, like consultancy, playtest reviews, and forum chatter. But now everything is potentially online, so how much telemetry is available in modern game engines? How much weight is placed on these forms of feedback? Obviously, it will vary from game to game and company to company, but I'd love to hear the broad strokes if you care to share. Thanks, Nathan in Warwickshire, UK.
So in
I feel like I've read this before, but it doesn't matter because
Doesn't
Steve
matter
Gaynor,
at all.
other game developer, is here now.
in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Was it Black Flag was the one where you were
Pirates.
like played the first person QA guy?
Yeah.
That was the first one where you, or that's the only one where you did that, right?
Yeah.
So
There was, well, maybe first person, but there was third person QA guy in other games, weren't there?
no, that guy was like,
Oh, he wasn't QA guy.
No,
he was the other
he
guy.
was just third
right.
person.
he was like a hero
Yeah.
guy or something, whatever. He was like,
He was still like a boring guy.
right, but he was like, he was a,
Still had a shitty job.
he was like the descendant of the assassins
Yeah,
in
yeah,
modern
yeah,
times.
yeah.
In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, it was just you were somebody who you were signing in for your first day working at Ubisoft as a tester. And so the framing narrative of the game was like, okay, play a mission, and it's you testing out this software and like giving your feedback on it. And so when you would finish an Assassin's Creed mission, they would do a thing that was like, how did you like the mission? Rate it 1 to 5 stars. And I was like, that's funny. You know, like you're the guy, it's the thing. And then I was at GDC last year, actually. I was talking to somebody from Ubisoft, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I worked on that series. You know, there's all this user testing that we do. We bring in focus tests, and like there was all this stuff that we did. And for so long, I was like, we need to let players when they buy the game rate the missions so that we know whether they like them or not. And then later on, we can like take those missions out or change them or whatever." So I was like, "Wait, that was real?" He was like, "Yeah." I was like, that wasn't just because you were playing as a QA.
Oh, you
guy?
just assumed. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was like, "No, we took that. Yeah, we used that." And in the new game, it's like all the designers would be like, "Oh, this kind of mission, nobody likes that." And then it was like, "Yep, everybody rated it 1 star." I'm like, "Oh my god, are you kidding?" Like I was amazed that like
that's really crazy.
that it was that straightforward. And then in Syndicate, there isn't that whole framing narrative of being somebody that works there, but you still can just rate every mission.
Yeah, of course.
Just because.
Yeah.
So that's one way that companies
I mean,
gather that data.
the sort of public metrics that they show or don't show, like when I worked at Telltale Games for a long time, the last few games that I worked on, and some of the ones you worked on there, Nick, I'm sure, were games where players were shown their choices at the end of the game, and that data also obviously is internal as well as a bunch more stuff. So, I mean, there is a lot of... I suspect that there's a lot of telemetry data that is stored by companies that you never see as a player, but it is always really interesting to me when games do show it, like the Telltale Game stats or the Assassin's Creed things, or like, God, Alien Swarm, that game that Valve put out that people played for like 3 weeks.
Wasn't that a mod game?
It started off as a mod, and then that team was just inside Valve, and I guess they said, we did it, can we just put it out? But it was a multiplayer top-down game, I think.
It was like Crusader or something. It was like a top-down 360-degree shooting thing.
But at the end of it, it would show your team's stats and like heat maps of deaths and all sorts of crazy figures.
That's right.
And it was really cool to see all that stuff. And it made me also think this is probably, that means this game is just secretly the test bed for a bunch of Valve reporting tools. Because
they have all that data for every Dota match now or whatever.
Yeah, like Valve keeps all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, there's like big different categories. I mean, there are a lot of different categories, obviously, of sort of testing things and player feedback. But like, there are definitely sort of hard feedback of, I liked this or I didn't like this, or like this part was hard. And whether it's self-reported or not, it's like we can tell that the player died. But then there's other things that are just really soft and fuzzy because there's no discrete input for them. It's just like...
Like, what's an example?
So, like, conversations... in a game where the choice is not like made explicit to the player, you're just going through a conversation. I guess you could test things like how many players see this like branch of the conversation and then infer like from that this one was less popular or something, but you don't necessarily know how they actually felt as the result of getting the thing. Like it might not be bad that not as many players did a thing.
Yes.
If the reason they didn't do it is because they were like connected to the story. Like a lot of data you can get, but it's not necessarily obvious.
You still have to infer
how
meaning.
You should, how you should interpret the data.
I mean, sometimes even stuff as like chunky and publicly available as just like achievement stats is at least interesting and useful. Like you can if it's like, oh, everybody got the like 80% of people got the achievement for finishing Act 3, and then 20% of people got the achievement for finishing Act 4. You're like, okay,
sure,
well,
for sure.
Because
that represents an implied failure state, basically.
Right. Yeah. Or just that's where people stopped caring or gave up or whatever.
Right. I'm including that in.
Yeah. Oh, you mean development failure, not like so I think there's a lot of that. It really depends, though. Some places are super data-driven and, like, maintain databases of that stuff, and sometimes it's mostly anecdotal and reading forum posts and
certain
stuff.
Games, like, just fit, like, are better suited to that. Like, a game that is explicitly about, like, a very careful balance, like, that stuff is just absolutely necessary because you need to know that stuff. Like, we're talking about balance. Nick, you brought up the balance thing with respect to Darkest Dungeon, and that game's an interesting example because there's sort of two different kinds of balance there, and they prioritized one well over the other. And the kind of balance that they did prioritize, and obviously this didn't work for Steve, for example, but like the kind of balance that they were at least trying to achieve for like a significant portion of their user base was frustration versus like perseverance and success, basically. So like, how much can we punish the player without stepping over the line into like they just don't want to play anymore, but they still feel like they're being constantly like there's like things are always uneasy and they're like always on slightly shaky footing. So there's that kind of balance, but then there's also the like balance that's internal to the game itself, which is like we have 15 different character classes and you have 4 of them in your party, and like how much do we care about balancing all of those classes against each other so that any given party of 4 different classes will actually create a balanced party? And that's the kind of balance they decided not to prioritize. And so the designer basically said, when people on the team like brought those concerns to me, I basically said like, that is just not my priority. I like right now there's like other design tenets that are more important in the moment. And I thought that was really cool. Like he sort of talked about wanting to create the feeling of like first edition D&D, where it's kind of janky and like if you pick the weird party composition, you have to just kind of roll with that, and it's just part of your weird specific like bundle of hardships in this game that is essentially a big bundle of hardships. And like obviously then in multiplayer games there's additional kinds of balance, which are like player versus player and like all kinds of other things. But like deciding which kinds of things are actually important at all to be balanced in your game is like another whole area. But yeah, I don't know. Making games is hard, I guess.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I remember when after I finished Firewatch, I was looking at because like I was looking at the trophies because it shows publicly like how many users have it or whatever, and it was interesting that I mean, you guys had good retention through the end of the game, but it was like just very textbook. Like 80% of players have Act 1, and then 70, and then 50, and then 40% finish the game. You know, it's just sort of like there's something between. Those are just people who haven't gotten around to finishing yet, and those are people like, I played half of it, I guess I started playing something else instead. And it's just interesting to see. Like, there are a lot of games where it's like, getting the end of the game, the achievement, is like, 15% of players have that, because nobody cared enough. But it always happens, and it's certainly... It's interesting when you look up that kind of stuff, and it doesn't map the way you would expect. Right. You know what I mean? At this point, I generally kind of feel like if you're in the zone of about... half the players finish the game, you're in like a pretty good
I think that's
like my general barometer.
That like that declining graph is also if you think about it in terms of a movie, it's not the case, but I think if you think about it in terms of like how many seasons of TV have you picked up and abandoned,
or a book of any length,
or like how many novels have you left sort of like open on your bed until you eventually just put it away?
For me, that's a lot.
Because
anything that requires more than like 1 to 2 hours is definitely like in most people's lives that's real time, and so
Thanks for listening to our hour-long podcast. making it through to almost the end.
Sorry about
you 10% of listeners out there.
How many podcasts of our podcast length do you listen to half of and then just fast forward to the end or delete and not listen to it next week? I do that a lot. I do that all the time.
Podcast is actually weird because it's so low tech compared to most things that are on the internet at all, or even not on the internet. Like even just like books, ebook readers are way more sophisticated than podcast readers in this way. Like podcasts, it is, as someone who makes a podcast, just because of the infrastructure that like this stuff is still running on, there's just no, unless you're listening through a proprietary thing like Stitcher or something, there's just absolutely no way for the actual creator of the podcast to know anything about their user behavior at all.
Yeah.
Like if you develop a podcast app like Overcast or something, then you as the developer of that thing could, I guess, collect stats, and maybe that guy does, but we as people who make this podcast I have no idea.
Yeah, it would be pretty fascinating to know, like, oh, we have however many thousands of downloads.
Like YouTube gives you all of that information for your videos. You can see you can see engagement and abandonment rate and all sorts of, like, when people get linked into your video. You can see all sorts of stuff for at least, I don't know if that's true of all accounts, but that is a feature that YouTube has.
Yeah.
SoundCloud itself might do that for people who listen through their website, but definitely not just like when it's just an MP3 file sent out over RSS like a podcast, though, you don't get any of that information.
When I worked at Bethesda, we could just you would launch like a game trailer, like the first like Skyrim teaser, and then just see where people like bounced in and out of it. It was so interesting. Oh my god!
Like when they would open a tab to tweet about it, or when they wouldn't care or whatever.
Yeah, you could just see the spikes in different places, and it was just fascinating. Like over like a 2-minute trailer, just seeing like, oh yeah, this is the point where they sense that like there's not much left, and like the stupid logo is going to come up soon, so they killed it early. This is like the 10-second point where like probably like if it was just like a redirect or something, they just closed it, and then there was just like a weird spike in the middle where clearly like people had just linked to the part that was actual like gameplay footage and not just like the the sort of like
that's so
rendered stuff, and it was like, oh man, you can just, it's like very clear what's going on, and that's really good.
As someone who's like, I've worked on several video game soundtracks and like released other music and stuff, and certain sites like Bandcamp, in the back end they'll show you like a breakdown of all your tracks and how many for each one. They'll subdivide the listens into like started playing it, listened to most of it, or listened to all of it, or like skip to the next one. And that is a weird, that is like can be a demoralizing thing. I mean, like any of the, like same with the thing you're describing with the trailers, Nick, like it's just, I think we all know deep down that all of our attention spans are terrible. But everyone likes to imagine if you're the creator of something, it's like, oh, like this many people enjoyed it, that means they all like enjoyed the whole thing. They're like, no, probably not. Like, or maybe they did and they just had enough of it after a while. And like, yeah, it's really interesting to see that data, which is not something that the creators all throughout history ever had.
No.
For like all of human existence, that's only a thing that like.
Think about how you can optimize your next musical composition based on those metrics, Chris.
What's funny is that actually never occurred to me. Like, well, of course, why would it? But like, it never even occurred to me as like a theoretical thing.
Technically true. I mean, that's got to be stuff that
to optimize your next composition?
Yeah, well, no, I just mean the idea of ever writing music with that in mind.
Well, but like, I would nearly guarantee
with games, it totally does
that like people who are like professional composers for like Taylor Swift or something are like, we have all the metrics on her last album. People really dropped off halfway through track 4, and that was like and that's got to be crazy.
There's like that one Swedish guy who writes like half of Taylor Swift songs and like also everyone else.
Right?
I think he's Swedish, but I'm sure that guy is extremely aware of like how many beats per minute are the most satisfying for like this demographic, and like how like how long is the attention span for this and that. Like, yeah, that stuff has got to be crazy.
Yeah.
Especially because now everything's on streaming services where they actually presumably are gathering all that information.
Well, and I bet that places, I mean, even more so than, I bet that like for like Netflix originals and Amazon original videos.
Oh, they've got to know all that
stuff. They've got to have all that shit, like, and way more
so
than like the movie studios that are making content and providing it to their.
I hope that mysterious Swedish man who writes all the pop songs knows.
Yes, for you.
I hope that he knows the metrics down to like where they're like, oh, well, people don't listen to it there. Then he's like, that's only the YouTube and Spotify people who give up. People who have paid for it give up here.
Right, yeah.
I will write the music for people who give up, who bought the album. I'm not writing music for people who give up, who listen only in Spotify.
Well, that also ties into, like, certain pop stars who have the ability to command... Like, this will not launch on streaming on day one. It will only be sold as an album.
I like that they could use the metrics of who likes, where it's like people still give up and skip tracks all over the place and whatever. But if there's different behavior, we're optimizing for the paid
the opposite side of it being like, okay, so this kind of we need, like, I'm just picturing balancing an album by like, okay, the third track needs to really appeal to YouTube users. It is like okay, we gotta have something that the Spotify people will really engage with. This album's missing a Spotify track. It's like
Spotify people never put any of the ones that sound like these or have similar patterns in their playlists. What's up?
The Spotify algorithm rarely recommends tracks.
So yeah, you just end up designing for AI at that point. Just literally like, what is this? What is this? What does this AI want? What for me? What does this machine want? Like,
yeah, someone would then be like,
Apple Music loves this shit. Wow, no.
We've noticed that Beats One members. Yeah, eventually you'll start doing like a weird visual analysis, and you realize that your second album just looks like a shittier JPEG of your first album somehow. Like, it's just
right.
Yeah.
Looks like a crisper JPEG.
We have perfected our algorithms.
Our algorithm.
Yes, for you.
This has been a great podcast.
Thanks for listening to Idle Thumbs, a podcast you are no longer listening to because you got bored of it 15 minutes ago.
Metric show.
We don't need metrics to make this declaration. You're not listening.
You can find us and all of our shows at idlethumbs.net. We're on Twitter at idlethumbs. And, thanks, Steve, for being on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm glad I could be here for you. Yeah.
For people who are probably wondering why Danielle didn't show up on the GDC episode, she was only in town for like 2 days. And we
tried to have her on.
Yeah, we missed. Yeah. So, sorry. Hi, Danielle. Listen to Danielle on Idle Weekend.
The reason that she had to fly back early is because she's getting her, like, EMT recertification. So just in classic Danielle form, it's just to do something way more awesome than...
That's true. Recording a dumb podcast that people stop listening to when the engagement metrics drop too low.
Yep. So, but you can hear her every week, as you probably know by now, at idleweekend.net. I actually still see people... Man, I actually still see people who mentioned being current Idle Thumbs listeners who like, over the past few weeks, I've seen people be, oh, Danielle's doing a podcast again, which probably means they are just all dropping out of Idle Thumbs episodes before the point where we remind them that Idle Weekend exists.
Oh, so we got to
get better engagement,
we have to start inserting, like...
Yeah.
It's at the highest point of... All right.
Well, that's not what I'm doing now.
But that's a good note for next week.
You can still find Idle Weekend, the podcast co-hosted by Danielle Riendo and Rob Zachney, at idleweekend.net.
Yeah, these are the people in the Bethesda player who are like, oh, this episode's basically over. Boop, gone.
What we need to do is design a URL that we can tell people at this point to go to, and then it's just a counter. So then we can just, like, if you're still listening to this podcast,
the idleweekend.net question mark ref equals thumbs 254.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
Well, and there's, like...
Don't do that. That doesn't
it doesn't go anywhere.
No, don't do that at all. No, but I was just thinking about...
Go to Zazzler.com.
I was just thinking about that's got to be, like, the weird, like, they figured this out in the 80s thing that, like, NPR does, is how they put, like, the consistent, like, post... like end of episode joke at the end of like This American Life or Car Talk or whatever, because they're like, people were gonna quit.
You mean the Puzzlers?
Yeah. Like as soon as we started doing Station Invitation, everybody was gonna quit.
So they always a little like tidbit at the end.
It's like, but we got to see what the joke is about the producer after the credit. Anyway, post credit sequence in Marvel Universe. Come on, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
I wonder what the French-Canadian pronunciation is according to this website.
J'espère Juol.
Oh!
Yes!
No, that's the one.
Oh,
no,
man.
that's what you take and just cut into every instance of Just for Jewel.
Yep.